The reverse hyper has a pendulum on it.
Yes.
The pendulum is different than like free weight, different than having a barbell and putting plates on it. It's different than having like a hammer strength machine, right? Where it's going on like a arc. It's different than like a Nautilus machine that has like a cam. It's different than a cable. Like it's different. Like the pendulum is different,
Yes.
right? The pendulum is something that, as someone who has worked with like Louis Simmons on the reverse hyper and like was able to like write about it in the special strength development for all sports manual, is something that nobody really discusses. Uh, that's something that kind of like naturally, let's say, emerged was we were doing work on oscillatory isometric muscle actions in the founders meeting, and as we're doing work on the oscillatory isometric muscle actions, we essentially came across a damping effect. Okay. And in order to understand the damping effect, you essentially did a whiteboard session in the founders meeting on like a pendulum, how a pendulum functions from like, let's say, a physics perspective.
Hmm.
Okay. Understanding that is very important. I didn't really realize how important it was until you were going through the diagram. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking about the pendulum in physics in regards, but immediately, because I train so much on a reverse hyper, I'm thinking like, oh, no one has discussed this concept in regards to the reverse. Like it's been brought up, I guess, to a degree that there's a pendulum there. Obviously, the patent is on the pendulum, which is unique,
Hmm.
even though like but not to get sidetracked. And so anyway, after the founders meeting, I'm having a discussion with you, and I'm like, hey, the reverse hyper program that we're working on like needs to
Hmm.
have its own actual module on pendulum and
Hmm.
how the pendulum enables the person who understands how to, let's say, like program for point B to then be able to set up certain training scenarios where then it's like, hey, use your low back to dampen the pendulum, right? And so,
Right.
and so, and then I'll just say this, like, so after that meeting, you know, I've trained like a lot using the reverse hyper, and from what you explained on that board, I started doing, there's like different types of damping, like different,
Sure. Yep.
light to right. Like now it's funny. Like now I start to use that, the damping effect, which we've written about. We wrote about how it's a programmable quality and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we did. Hmm.
But I've been starting to use it specifically in regards to the reverse hyper and specifically in regards to like, hey, can my neural network, like, can I dampen those tissues to stop the pendulum, which then creates this crazy training effect within the tissues? And so
Certainly.
I guess I don't know really, I don't really know where I'm going with this other than, hey, there's a lot of information that we can come out with in regards to like leveraging the pendulum in there to be able to program for very specific things that people don't even think that you can program for. Like think about reactive strength and damping and like
Sure.
and all this other stuff. So did you want to kind of like fill in the gaps?
Well, I think a large the large gap is filled in the founders meeting. Let me just say that with respect to damping as a trainable quality, um, the pendulum is the easiest way to understand that. And so again, we did go through this in the founders meeting. I'll just add a little bit here. The idea is that if you have a pendulum swinging back and forth, how do you A, create more force to get the pendulum to move, maybe at a higher rate or a faster rate, which is the resonant frequency of that pendulum. So that's an important concept that we will hash out in the coming time with respect to the reverse hyper. So how do we get the pendulum moving based on what the intent of the input might be, which is how do we then dampen the swinging pendulum? And damping basically just means how do we take the force out of the pendulum? So if the pendulum is swinging at a particular oscillatory rate, how do we take the force out of the pendulum to ultimately slow it down? Okay.
Mm,
And so that's where, to your point earlier, that's where this concept of damping comes in. So how quickly do you want to take the force out of the pendulum? And when I say
mm,
take force out of the pendulum, essentially what I'm meaning there is how quickly do we want to create a transfer of energy from the pendulum
mm,
to the thing that's damping the pendulum to
mm,
ultimately create an effect. And so you can damp that swinging pendulum in various time frames. It's kind of what you were alluding to. So you can do it over, longer time frames. You could do it over shorter time frames. Obviously, the shorter the time frame that you're trying to minimize the oscillation of the pendulum, the more energy that's going to require. It's going to create a larger change in energy. And so that's essentially what we're saying here. And so that's the gap that's kind of hopefully being filled here is if you think of the reverse hyper having a moving pendulum, um, we are now adding a layer onto it where we're saying the pendulum is the main stimulus. And when you think about the pendulum from a physics perspective, ultimately what you're doing to try to create variation in stimuli is how do you change the momentum of the pendulum?
mm.